Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu outlined today government's COVID-19 relief measures to help ease the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. She announced the reintroduction of the 350 Rand COVID-19 Social Relief of Distress grant and details the eligibility criteria. Minister Zulu joins us now to take us through what this could possibly mean for South Africans. And to be a part of the conversation, you can send us your WhatsApp questions and comments to 072-110-5584. You can tweet us tonight at Newzroom 405. Minister Zulu, good evening and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Tawa, and thank you very much for the opportunity, and good evening to your viewers.
First and foremost, let's start with the money that is still at the post office that has not been claimed from the previous round of the SRD. Why is that amount not currently accounted for?
Well, the money is accounted for. I think let me just clarify the difference here, is that money that has not been claimed is money that has not been claimed by people who were probably approved to collect the money, but they haven't collected the money. And there's a number of reasons why some people might not collect the line. People apply and then they lose their IDs, or they get the job back and therefore they don't need to collect the money. So it's not money that's not accounted for. All that money is accounted for, because as long as it has not been collected, it hasn't been collected by the recipient.
So it's not a case of somebody is not aware that there is such money that is available to them. It's just maybe their circumstances have just purely changed, or it's not a glitch in the system.
They should be aware of the fact that the money is there, because all the other millions of people who have collected their money, they collected the money because they were informed through the due process of either SMS that informed them that they have money, and then they have to go and collect the money. So the money that has not been collected is money that has not been collected by the recipients who were approved. The issue is, why haven't they collected it? And I don't think it's an easy answer for us. Safe to say that we might ask ourselves the question, maybe these are people who applied, then got jobs. Maybe these are people who either lost their IDs or something, because you cannot come and collect the money without the relevant document that proves that it's you who is that person who's coming to collect the money.
Yeah. So what happens then in the interim if there are such people who could be in need of the money but don't have the required documentation?
As long as you were approved, as long as you were informed that the money is there, you still can go and collect that money, because remember that what we said was that those that had not been paid their money during the first period of the COVID-19, from the time that it was extended, they still can be able to go and collect the money. That's why we also indicated to them that if they don't collect the money by the 31st of August, legally, you don't have a leg to stand on, but to return the money to Treasury.
What is it that the department is doing to try and eliminate that necessity to collect, so that you can distribute the money and it goes directly to those who are supposed to be the recipients?
Well, look, there's 6 point something to 7 million people that collected their money, because remember that we indicated that we had almost 10 million applications, and we processed almost like 7 million of those people, and those that qualified, they have been able to collect their money throughout the period. Look, we've got millions of people who did collect their 350 on a monthly basis. Albeit, of course, I must say, some of them, it took long for them to get the money due to going to the post office maybe and standing in the queue for long, or getting to the post office and being told that the money is finished in the post office. But ultimately, when we look at the numbers of people who have collected the 350 since we started, since it was extended the first time, since it was extended for the second time, since it was extended now. It's extended now, and there are lessons learned from the past. Majority of people who applied, who qualified, they did collect their money.
Then, Minister, talk to us about the impact that the first or the second round of the grant being issued to the 6 million, the impact of that on South Africa's battered economy. What have you seen as the impact?
Well, the good thing is that the research that we talk about is not only research that was done by ourselves. Remember that there are also organizations out there whose main interest and their day-to-day activity gauge the level of unemployment, gauge the level of suffering of people. So they do the research. And when they did that research, which by the way also coupled our own research, it was very clear that the millions or the billions that government put in the hands of South Africans through this COVID-19 period, firstly with the adding to the normal social grants that people were getting up until October last year, including the ones that have been receiving their 350. None of them went buying anything else other than their basic needs. So people have been spending that money on their basic needs. They've been spending their money on food items. Some have been spending the money on transport. Some have been spending that money looking for jobs. And so we are 100% sure that the money that went into the hands of those people, the majority of them, they use the money for procurement of goods that help them and sustain them on their day-to-day basis, which therefore means while government has been putting that money in the hands of people, they've returned it back into the economy because they've not been procuring goods that are coming from outside. They've been buying your most basic, your sugar, your milk, your bread, your meal, just the things that ordinary families and families that are struggling normally need.
The estimation in terms of research was that, for example, if money is given at the FPL, the food poverty line of 585, at least 5% of that money could be clawed back through tax. Now we're talking below that FPL line. How much of it were you able to claw back?
A bit because I think the network is very bad. I couldn't hear. I only heard you talking about clawing back, so I'm not sure.
So I'm saying some of the research estimates that if, for example, the grant was sitting at the food poverty line at about 585, you could be able to claw back as much as 5% through tax via this particular grant. I'm asking you, how much were you able to get back in tax via VAT and so on and so forth as people were purchasing goods?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have that kind of figures, and I guess we can be able to do that research. I actually don't even think at this moment ourselves as a department we did a research that talks about clawback and how much of VAT and all this. I don't have those details.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we can talk about later when people have done proper research on it. Right now, I don't have those figures.
You don't think that it would have helped, suppose, in the conversation around the basic income grant that you have those details? Because there is, of course, a call that let's make this guaranteed income something a little bit more permanent so that we could be able to give a stronger boost to the battered economy of South Africa. Because as you mentioned, you know for sure that that money is going to be spent in the economy, and those people will be paying VAT, and you'll be able to recoup it as government.
That's a good idea you're giving me. Maybe I didn't think about it that way, but I can guarantee you, when it comes to the basic income grant, you've got work that was done way before I came into this space, and you've got people that are now talking about it, now excited about it, who've got those facts and figures, who've got options as to even what must we do in order for us to implement that basic income grant. We have been meeting with quite a number of people, including economists, some of whom are very excited about it because they think that the debate about not having it shouldn't be the debate we should be having. The debate that we should have is the how. How do we fund it? How do we creatively make it work? But more than anything else, it's about looking at what impact it can make, particularly for people who are below down, who have got absolutely nothing. What can it do to help those people? And Treasury is having a discussion with us too, because I don't think we should always think that Treasury are people who are hard-hearted and only looking at the figures and crunching the figures without really turning an eye to the poverty, unemployment, and inequality that people are facing. So we here to have that conversation, because I think we should be asking ourselves the question as South Africans: do we want a country continue with so much levels of poverty, with so much levels of unemployment, with so much levels of inequality? I don't think we want to go that route. So we need to look at different ways in which we can help the marginalized, the most poor, to rise and be able to actually sustain themselves and keep themselves above the water.
Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu stays with us when we continue in a moment. So we are with the Minister of Social Development tonight here on Newzroom AFrika Channel 405. Earlier on, she was, of course, giving details and unpacking what would be the process to be followed and direction as far as the application for the Social Relief of Distress Grant. This is the COVID-19 relief announced by the President. Of course, this comes at a time when situations got exacerbated by the unrest we saw in the country a couple of weeks ago. We're taking your questions in a moment as well for the Minister tonight. Minister, questions have been raised particularly around the application process and how cumbersome it was, for example, in rural areas where other people did not have network, people did not have cell phone connection and therefore could not apply. Have you made that process easier this time around?
Yes, absolutely. We couldn't have not used the lessons learned from the first time that we had to implement the application process for the social grant. But look, if you had about 10 million people applying for the social grant and being able to apply properly and fill up the information that was needed there. So it does mean that to a very large extent, our people are able to access your technology, your cell phone, your other means that your USSD that they had to use. So it means there was a way that people were able to apply. I think more where the challenge was is after application, once the approval had been done, we had some bit of problems where people were using one cell phone for this and changing the cell phone and then changing the details somewhere along the line. We have said, myself, I've said to the CEO of SASSA, can we find another better way of once the approval has been made? Because we had more of a problem after the approval than we had with the applications. The applications were going on very well, which to me also says that South Africans, even in the deepest rural areas, they use the cell phone. Technology is reaching them. Of course, I know that there's a technological gap between those who are in rural areas and those who are in the cities. We know that. But there's a lesson that we have learned here, that if we ask people to apply and never went to any offices and they used the available platform for the application, and you had 10 million people applying, it means there's a lot that we can do to reach our people, way more than just the issue of applying for the 350. Yes, we will try our best to improve the system. That is why I indicated in my press briefing this morning that this afternoon, we never got any extra money for creating a new system, because if you need to use other systems, use other technology, you've got to spend money on it. And then again, we are in a difficult financial situation where it's not easy for us to just get the money and buy the technology that's available. We are using a lot of our own internal. So using the WhatsApp actually was one of the best, because most people easily get through to WhatsApp. Using the website also was very possible, because we mustn't lose sight of the fact that while these people who are applying are people who are unemployed, many of them have got children in their homes, and the children go to school. And as we know, children explore a lot. So they help their parents, their brothers, their sisters who are making the application.
Are you anticipating a situation where once again you will see long queues at the post office, people showing up wanting to make these applications? In as far as the previous numbers are concerned, what percentage of those people were actually people who wanted to be there in person as opposed to people who applied online, and what provisions are you making for that?
Look, we didn't experience the long queues from a point of view of applying, because the application, you could not go and apply in any office. You had, as a matter of must, you had to use the platforms that we had created. So from an application point of view, an approval point of view, people didn't have to go to any office. They don't have to do that even now. The queues that we saw in the main were of people who are now going to collect the money after approval. And remember that in the payment, it was usage of the banks, usage of the retail, usage of the post office. And most of the people, the bulk of the people that actually collected their money, they were collecting it through the post office, because also through the post office, they didn't have to pay any extras for withdrawal and all that, even though we do have negotiations with the banks to try and make sure that people don't pay as they withdraw, pay too much money, because, I mean, you're giving them money and then you're taking some of that money away. So let me make it just clear that in the way that they were applying for it, they didn't have to go anywhere. They don't have to go to any offices, even now, for the application. Remember that the reason why we couldn't use a system where people go to the offices was because of COVID-19. So COVID-19, while it's a painful process, it also taught us something else, that we could have actually been using systems where people can apply without having to go to any office, without having to queue anywhere. So the lessons that we learned from there, we're taking now to the new leg that we are doing now, to say, post office, can you help us now to make sure that even if people do come to the queues, can there be a proper management of the queues? Can there be a COVID-19 protocol in the queues? Can we also find systems that can enable people and communicate to people that they don't all have to go at the same time? We managed to try and segregate people according to their cell phone numbers, so that we knew this time this is a lot of people that are going there. But remember that you're talking about people that have got absolutely nothing. Yeah. So whatever system you put in place, if it doesn't respond to their pain, if it doesn't respond to their need, and if you don't communicate with them on time, they will wake up in the morning and go there because they're desperate, they need the money. So what I have been saying as a minister in particular, let us find the best way of ensuring that there is dignity, even if they are in the queue, there's dignity, number one. Yeah. Number two, let's close this problem of people traveling to post offices only to be told that the post office is going to serve only about 30 to 50% of the people that are in the queue. And we have had meetings with the Minister of Communication and Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. We are working together to ease the tension of what we saw before. And I think that while I might not say 100% will be sorted in that, we are going to experience that. What makes it even more difficult is the fact that in the post offices themselves, we are operating at a maximum of the 100%, because the post office, SASSA, they've also been affected by COVID-19. So in some places we're working at 50%, some places we're working at 70%, with a number of people who are able to serve in the post offices. But those
still though, Minister,
ATMs and all, I think those are in a better than anyone else, because they can go at any time to go and withdraw their money. But of course, the post office has got a broader network. So you've got people in rural areas who cannot go to banks. The easy access is the post office. And that's why we're having this conversation with the post office to say dignity for our people. If there's their chairs, let's make sure that there are marshals. Yeah. Let's make sure the volunteers are there. Let's make sure that we even get water and other things for the people that are coming through.
I'm saying still, though, on the question of application, even though you're saying a large number were able to access the facilities, there is a small margin, according to the study by Black Sash, in rural areas that found it hard to apply. Are you making it easier for those?
For the small margin that found it hard, what we're also looking at is, I know there are people who are in the rural areas who have been calling us and saying, we've got an app, we've got a system that can be able to help those who are in the rural areas. It's important for us to engage with them. Some of them, we've engaged them. Some of them, I know they're very disappointed with us because they had systems that they kept on bringing to us, and they kept on saying, we can help you do it better. But our biggest problem is that anybody who comes and wants to help you with anything, they need to be paid for that. And as I said earlier on, we were not given an extra budget for the administration and management of this. So we had to make do with what we had internally. But nothing stops us from looking at those apps, for instance, that people are talking about, those cash payments that we can be able to do. I think SASSA has done very well, really, in looking for better innovative ways of serving our people on this 350, particularly because we didn't have the system for it. President Cyril Ramaphosa rightfully announced it, and we had to make sure that we make do with the money that we had. We also didn't want to be given a budget by Treasury and come back to the people and say, actually, we're going to take so much of it to implement and therefore reduce the number of people that need to get the money. So we needed to be creative. Even now, I'm 100% sure that lessons learned from the previous two legs of implementing this, we want to do it a little bit better than we did the previous time.
All right, let's talk then about the criteria. I mean, you outlined at least 9 areas of criteria, if not 10, that people would need to adhere to. You've got to have you have to be a citizen. In other words, you have to have your ID. You're currently residing within the borders of the Republic, above the age of 18 and below the age of 60, unemployed, not receiving social grants in respect to himself or herself, not receiving the UIF benefit, and this one, not receiving a stipend from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. There are students who had applied for the NSFAS and were then later rejected to be admitted, supposed to any institution of higher learning, be it a TVET or a university. But these students were also rejected by the SRD. Does this mean now the department owes those students, and what is going to be the undertaking for them?
Well, look, like you really reading through what we have said as an eligibility, if we were to call it, we're not changing from that eligibility, because remember, we have quite a number of people who have been getting this grant before. They have to apply, afresh actually applying, and we also made it very clear to do the verification throughout, as we did. All the ones that we paid, believe me, we were doing the verification each and every month. It is a tedious, it is a frustrating process, but from a point of view of ensuring that you pay the right people, you need to have the system that proves that. I'm not saying that somewhere along the line they were in or slipped out, because I know, as a matter of fact, there are some people who are not registered as working, and you find that when you want to check with NSFAS, check with any other grant, they are nowhere in the grants, and then therefore we approve them, only to find that some of them have gone back to one job or the other, one little job or the other. That's a very difficult thing to deal from a South African perspective, because the majority of your people, some of them are not properly registered, not paying any tax, so you won't find them anywhere. Some people are doing businesses for themselves. Many of them, of course, collapsed because the businesses, COVID-19 had such impact. So we're not changing from the eligibility that we had outlined the previous time. Safe to say that this time around, we are adding the caregivers who were not there. And one of the reasons why we needed to add the caregivers is because we realized that the majority of people who were getting, who were collecting the 350 were males. And we're not saying that we've got a problem with males collecting the money when they're unemployed. I'm just hoping that when they collect that money, being males, they make sure that if they've got children and they've got responsibilities, they use that money for that responsibility. But we realize that if it's mainly males who are collecting the money, what about the women, and many of whom probably find it very difficult in the process of application and so forth? What about the caregivers? The caregivers are the people in the main, are women, whether young or old. It doesn't change. It is women. And it is for this reason that President Cyril Ramaphosa decided, I hear you when you're talking about the fact that many of the women who actually are taking care of children are not getting money. So let's add them. We're not changing from the previous eligibility. It still stands. Safe to say that we're adding the caregivers.
Yeah. So are you saying that includes beneficiaries of child support grants?
Yes, it includes beneficiaries of child care support grant, because those ones are people who get the 450, if I say. It includes them because that is not adequate for them to be able to take care of the children. And the caregivers, by the way, it's not just the mothers of the children. Caregivers are a variety of people, old and young, who take care of children that also fall under the Department of Social Development of giving them the grants.
Still with us, the Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu. So the question, Minister, is when I read the eligibility, as you say, it says if you're an NSFAS recipient, you may not apply. And so I do not apply because at the time I would have maybe even applied and got rejected because on the basis that I had already applied for NSFAS. But ultimately, I don't get admitted to any university or TVET college. What does that make then of my status of rejection? And can you retrospectively then say you owe me the 350 for the time that I had applied previously? That was more specifically the question I was asking.
Remember that the new applications that we're doing, they are not going back or retrospectively. We're starting, as we indicated, that on the 6th of August, we'll be opening up for the applications, and then we start payments by the end of the month. So you cannot be asking us about previous ones that you were at NSFAS, you applied for NSFAS and you didn't get it and you were rejected. You see, one of the things that is really pushing us as a government overall is to make sure that our data about South Africans, where they are from a point of view of either work or at school or university or all, ourselves working together with Home Affairs and all other relevant institutions that have data about people, we need to be able to create a system that can speak to each other and be quick in speaking to each other, because the experience I have from the previous one was that some people were unfairly not approved, because many of them, it was said, they had been working, they were under some government department or something. I mean, even of late, I was in KwaZulu-Natal and in Ugu region. I came across women who were saying, look, I'm used to work for government, but I don't work for government anymore. I haven't been working for the past 3 years. So I think that I deserve to be able to get this money because I'm unemployed right now. Even if we talk about pension, I was just an ordinary worker there who didn't have this big pension that other people might have. So moving forward, I am aware, we are aware of people who apply and we find that they are under either NSFAS or they are in any other data. What we need is to make sure that people must be able to prove that they actually are not there. So when people send the information, we have to really count counter-check that information, because it really wouldn't be a good idea for us to have 350 rand being paid to people who are in jobs, being paid to people who are even in government working. So I am aware of the fact that the systems have not been talking very well to each other, but these are the lessons that we have made, and so we need to sharpen our institution, our systems, not our institutions. Make sure that our systems talk to each other, and this is one of the biggest weaknesses we have at the current moment.
What have you done to tidy up that system? I tell you, here's a tweet coming through tonight. It's explaining exactly that. Says government department failed the people on the first batch of this, as many who were employed and others getting other grants managed to be paid still. So how are they going to make sure that this time around this person is really unemployed? So how are you going to tidy up your database, Minister? Basically, is the question, to make sure that it is a reliable and credible database. You don't have UIF beneficiaries there. You don't have NSFAS beneficiaries there. You don't have people who own companies who are getting PPE tenders also getting the 350 rand.
SASSA has improved in its system, because remember that I said from the very beginning, when the 350 was announced, remember the process of application and the process of approving was very different from before, where people have to go to the offices of SASSA, demand for certain documents. If you don't bring those documents, physical, those documents are still on even today for other grants. SASSA has identified that long time ago as we started in the payment, and the second leg of the payment, actually, that's when we realized that there is an opportune moment for us to improve our system. I know that at the back room of SASSA, they've really been working at improving the system. The system has been improved, but that doesn't mean you won't find here and there people who slip through. But look at it from this point of view. The number of people who are approved because they really deserve the money, and the number of people who are applying and being approved when they don't deserve, it's a small number. But I said in the press briefing, as I said today, we can't even afford the smallest number. Quite frankly, we can't even afford one person who takes the money that should have been given to somebody who truly deserves it. So it's about the systems being locked in, and I think SASSA is ready for that right now.
Now, overall, the complaint or dissatisfaction, Minister, is that the grant is insufficient to be able to provide and alleviate the multiple hardships that individuals and households are dealing with. I mean, if you are going to buy electricity and you're going to pay for food at the same time, you have to choose which one you're going to go with here, because it can't be able to accommodate both. And there's been this call that at least put it up at 585. That is the low level of the poverty line. Could possibly be the correct place to place it as your phase-in process. But of course, the upper level of the poverty line would certainly be where it needs to be, sitting at about 1,200 or so, so that at least it makes a dent on the poverty rate, but also keep it for longer. In fact, keep it permanently. Okay, Minister, I think you're muted now.
Hello?
All right, there you are.
Yes. Look, let us recall why we have a 350 social relief of distress. Remember that this wasn't a social relief of distress that we already had in the system, like the one that we normally have. Remember that besides the 350, this government has had in its program the social relief of distress, depending on the distress and what the distress has been caused by. In many instances, it's floods. In some instances, it's fires. In some instances, it's families that actually cannot take care of themselves, cannot put food on the table. That has been a permanent feature of this government. And maybe we need to have another discussion that breaks down what actually is that, because that on its own, we've been spending billions of money on it. This 350 was necessitated by COVID-19 that landed on us, put us in a very difficult situation where people could not go and do and fend for themselves as they normally do. Hence, it is a social relief of distress for the people who are unemployed. It is the people who lost their jobs. It is the people who are jobless. So it had to be at that 350 because the president, treasury, and those that sit with the purse of government, we needed to look at how much do you have, because you can't go around announcing a 580 something and then the next thing you are not able to pay it, because we're not the only ones in government who are requesting treasury to step up in assisting. So President Cyril Ramaphosa, his office, treasury, the Department of Social Development, and all others concerned had to look at what do we have in our purse in order for us to just alleviate the problem that we're having right now. So this is a separate discussion from a discussion that is now raging, and I'm happy that there is that discussion about the basic income grant, where we now talk about the upper level, the lower level of the poverty line, how much is that going to be? That's a separate discussion altogether. And I think it is a discussion that South Africans need to wake up to say, what is going to happen? Where are we going to find the money? Where are we going to get the funding? So that then we can be able to consistently, of course with the proper criteria, what are we going to do about those people who are between the ages of 19 and 59, who are always finding themselves lost in the middle, not getting no grant, not getting anything. And the grant must also be appreciated that it's not about just giving people money and you think they're going to sit at home. It is about assisting them to go look out for some things to do. Look, if people at the rate of 350, there are some informal businesses who thought the 350 plus another 350 maybe can help me start an informal business. That's the route that we need to take. But this one of the 350, let it be understood that it was government's response to a challenge that we never thought of, that is of COVID-19 and the impact thereof.
Minister, we appreciate your time. Thanks for your indulgence tonight. Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu there joining us tonight, outlining some of the measures, of course, and the implementation and the improvements have been made to the application process and disbursement process of the SRD.